Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm Nathan Staples, and joining me this evening are Bleacher Report Samuel Rook and French football writer Rich Allen. The stage was set, the paperwork all finally correct, and everything in place ready for Neymar's debut. So did the Brazilian live up to these lofty expectations we all have, or was it an own goal to start his career in French football? All will be revealed, including your questions after the latest headlines. The weekend kicked off on Friday night, earlier than usual, as Troyes registered a win 20 attempts earlier than the disastrous 2015-16 season, earning a 2-1 victory against Champions League chasers Nice, who head to Napoli on Wednesday. Lyon continued their 100% record to start the new season with a 2-1 win at Rennes, goals coming from Mariano Diaz and a Memphis Depay free kick. On Saturday, Marseille knocked off Nantes 1-0 in a scoreline that flatters the hosts, who will be thankful for the contributions of debutant goalkeeper Cyprien Tatarusanu, who kept for keeping the scoreline so low. In the multiplex, Saint-Etienne maintained their perfect record with a 1-0 win at Caen, while Toulouse managed to see off Montpellier by the same scoreline. Angers saw their new striker Enzo Crivelli get off the mark in a 2-0 win at Amiens, while his former club Bordeaux also notched a double to beat Metz at the Matmut Atlantique. Strasbourg earned their first win back in Ligue in a crazy encounter with Lille on Sunday, which saw goalkeeper Mike Magnon sent off for throwing the ball at a player and an outfield player going in goal twice in a 3-0 defeat. Monaco managed without teenage sensation, Kylian Mbappe away to Dijon, winning 4-1 with a hat-trick from El Tigre, Radamel Falcao. And in Sunday's late game, Paris Saint-Germain saw new signing Neymar grab a goal and an assist in their 3-0 win over Guingamp, who at least won Twitter. So that's all for our headlines. Be sure to check everything out on our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and follow us on Twitter at GFFN. We start this week at the Stade de Rouerou, where the world's most expensive player Neymar finally made his PSG bow. It was up in the air for a few days until it was confirmed that he would be available on Thursday. But Rich, how did the Brazilian get on in front of this paltry crowd of 18,000 on?
He did really well. It's. I don't know if there were many that were expecting him not to play very well. The fanfare that he'd arrived under, and obviously that enormous fee that's going to loom over him now for the rest of his career. But no, he was excellent. He was full of running. He was absolutely determined to get on the score sheet, which eventually he did. Looks like he's going to be having looks like there's the start anyway of a really good relationship with Edinson Cavani. He was just very, very exciting to see, as you would expect for a player of such reputation and carrying such a weight behind him. But no, I was really, really impressed by him. It would have been quite easy, I think, to have sat back and perhaps just let the first game just almost wash over him, but he was at the centre of everything good about Paris Saint-Germain. You know, he was eager to get on the ball, eager to run at those Guingamp players, was looking to involve Di Maria, Cavani, wherever possible. So really, really, really good start to what's going to be a very interesting season, I think, for him.
Yeah, it looks really exciting. And Sam, let's talk about not just his performance, but also his fit inside this team, because he did occasionally drift in the middle and it made Cavani play a little bit wider. He dropped deep at times as well. How do you think he fits into this starting 11, as we saw at least in his first outing against Guingamp?
I think it was remarkable for how comfortable he looked. Just straight away, he fit right into this team. It's his job when he came here was to make this his team, and he seemed to do that right from the off. He was in charge. He had the ball. He got more touches than anyone on the pitch. He got 128 touches of the ball. He could easily, as you say, have just sort of hung out wide, waited for his chance. But no, he came in, took over, took chances, completed 11 dribbles. It's more than anyone completed in the last 10 years in Ligue, except for Ousmane Dembélé once. He really just took this game on straight from the off, and that's what we all wanted to see.
Yeah, and it makes everything a little bit more exciting. Rich, like I've just mentioned, it was sort of the team adapting around him at times with him having such a free role. How do they continue to make sure that works with the players they have, the likes of Di Maria? Maybe was a little bit silent at times. Cavani, obviously, like I mentioned, had to pull wide on occasion. How does Unai Emery make sure that the team adapt nicely around Neymar when he's so influential, as Sam pointed out?
I actually think it's probably going to prove almost a little tricky. I think for Emery, he's obviously sounds silly to say he obviously has to build this team around Neymar. This was supposedly the reason Neymar joined. So first and foremost is centre that team around him. As Sam said, that worked really well Sunday night. You know, he was, as I said before, the centre of everything that was good about Paris Saint-Germain. So I think the key for them is really how well he links up with Cavani, and then what they do about that third attacking role. If they're going to persist with a sort of 4-3-3 that they've been playing, as what do they do with that? I don't, a lot of talk seems to be about, is Di Maria going to be the sort of bigger name that's going to be sold off before the transfer window closes? Will Draxler get a chance? Will they even look at, Lucas Moura? Will they look at even perhaps pushing Pastore a little wider? But I actually thought that Neymar looked better when he came more central. Whether that gives Cavani some horrible nightmares about, oh my God, it's Ibrahimovic Mark II and I've got to play out wide again, I don't know. But I think PSG will probably get the best out of him by allowing him, positioning out more on the left, but giving him that flexibility to drift inside. I think that flexibility was what was given in parts at Barcelona, and I think that's imperative that they tap into that in Paris. So for me, what's going to have to be looked at from Paris's point of view is they've got the attack sorted, I think. Neymar and Cavani are going to be a really exciting pair to see. They now need to bolster that midfield behind them to give them a really solid base, because at the minute, I don't think that midfield is solid enough. It's very stodgy, if you like. There's not a lot of excitement there. So there's one or two players I think they should be looking at recruiting there, but it's a really, really exciting start for Paris Saint-Germain fans. Whether it's an exciting start for neutral fans, I don't know. But I'm looking forward to. I suppose this is the thing, isn't it? I'm looking forward to the next game.
Yeah, which seems
and as a non-PSG fan, that's perhaps what they've been after.
Yeah, and it does seem strange to say that we're looking forward to a Paris Saint-Germain game that has a bit more joie de vivre maybe after last season was a bit rudimentary at times. And Sam, Rich has mentioned the amount of attacking talent they've really got in those areas, and there's still persistent rumours of the likes of Mbappe maybe even coming through the door, and we'll discuss about him later. But surely someone has to move out. I mean, Draxler wasn't in the squad at the weekend, neither was Lucas. Pastore came on late on. Di Maria is maybe the one that they are, some are at least rumoured to be the one to go because he's the more high profile. Maybe they can get a little bit back for him. What do you see happening in that player that's the odd one out after Neymar and Cavani?
It's difficult to predict, but surely not Draxler, given he arrived so recently and looked so good and was able to push Di Maria out of the starting lineup at times last season as well. You'd have to think Emery saw that, recognized the fact that Draxler was a difference maker for him in the second half of the season when his job was not under threat, but it was a little bit not on entirely solid ground, given the Champions League collapse, given losing the league title to Monaco. Draxler really sort of helped him along. Lucas Moura, again, he's been there for a long time. Perhaps his time in Paris has come to an end. He didn't play a lot towards the end of the season. He played a little bit for himself when he did get chances. He seems like one who could also be sold for a decent fee, but is not on the wages anywhere near what Di Maria is on. So you'd have to think one of those two at least, and that's even now, that's before a potential Mbappe or a potential Alexis Sanchez or even someone else. Perhaps they'll get him for Coutinho as well.
Just trying to imagine they're playing to just score goals now from the seams of things. But I do want to mention the other positions really, Rich, and especially in the first half, I thought Guingamp were relatively decent, although they didn't quite trouble Paris Saint-Germain's defence as much as they would like to. Is there positives to take from any performances from the midfield, or is there on the defence, or is there maybe still a couple of worries there, especially for example when they start challenging for the Champions League come September?
I absolutely think there's problems with the midfield. I'm really not a fan of them continuing with Thiago Motta. I think, okay, he can bring a lot of experience, but they've got experience elsewhere. I think they could look at bringing in someone a little bit more dynamic. I'm not sure whether playing Verratti now alongside Motta gets you the best out of Verratti. Motta isn't the player he once was. Whether Verratti then has to, or one of Verratti or Rabiot has to be hanging back, helping out Motta, covering for Motta. It startles me that they spent so long, obviously, on this Neymar deal, and we've heard persistent rumours all summer of a deal for, or trying to get a deal over the line for Fabinho. We've got down at Nice, you've got Seri, who I think I said on the show last week, Nice are saying, we're almost advertising, somebody offer us the 40-odd million that we want for Seri, and basically you can have it. Why they haven't taken up that offer, because you drop Seri into that midfield alongside Verratti, alongside Rabiot, all of a sudden you've got a midfield three that's just as exciting as the front three. So I've long been saying, and I think I'm certainly not alone, that PSG have to look at that midfield. They have to look at adding something a bit different, a little bit more energy, and something a bit more fresh, I think, that can come in. They've got the likes of Motta, they've got the likes of Matuidi, who've been there a long time now. Let's get something new in there. Let's get something fresh in there that can just inject a little bit of life into that midfield.
Yeah, and Seri was brought up a lot earlier today with the signing of Paulinho to Barcelona, and there's Liverpool interested in him. I still can't believe he's still at Nice. It's unbelievable already that no one's quite come in for him yet. Continuing really with PSG's squad, Sam, and like we mentioned, the Champions League will be fast approaching them really come September time. And we have a question from one of our viewers, Demitter. Does that PSG squad still need more reinforcements now to really challenge for that Champions League title now they've got Neymar in the bag?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, you can get lucky to challenge the Champions League. Chelsea won it with a very average team in 2012, but to be a team that doesn't need luck to at least make a run at the Champions League, they do need reinforcements. The back four is good, not great. The combination between Thiago Silva and Marquinhos at times is still a bit ropey. They're both a bit too similar sometimes. Both Areola and Trapp are not top-class goalkeepers. It's amazing that PSG, with the money that they are happy to spend on other positions, haven't gone out to get a top goalkeeper. You'd think someone like Hugo Lloris would be an obvious move to at least try and get Tottenham's goalkeeper. France #1, France captain, you've got experience. Seems like a good fit. Kurzawa, again, good, not great. Dani Alves, will his legs hold up for a whole season? There's a lot of question marks over the entire backline. And as you mentioned, the midfield, there is still the problem that if Verratti gets injured like he did last season, there is no replacement. When he went down last season, that was what really killed PSG, and they haven't got a backup for him yet.
Yeah, in fairness to them, that's very difficult to replace such a talented player in the squad, really, trying to find someone that can really replicate what he attempts to do. Rich, just quickly on Guingamp, they did hold off for 45 minutes, and they were relatively decent at times. I think Marcus Coco had a half-decent half where he helped relieve some of the pressure off them, and they had a couple of chances, but the awful own goal to start things off really just killed them off, didn't it?
It absolutely did. It was, Coco was in the spotlight all evening, obviously, because he was the one that was initially tasked with the marking of Neymar. So he was going to be under pressure. A really early booking certainly didn't help matters. And it was just a complete switch off. It was a momentary lapse in judgment. And yeah, it was a horrendous own goal. There's plenty of tweets going around with the sort of look on Ikoku's face after the ball had gone in. This sort of shock of has that happened? Have I really just done that? To sort of horror on his face. It's a, I don't want to say it's a hilarious picture because it's very unkind on the player, but it's worth checking out. But from then on in, Guingamp just sadly for them just disintegrated. 3-0 I think is perhaps a little harsh on them. I don't think their performance warranted such a large scoreline. I think PSG had chances in the first half, but I think Guingamp managed to sort of keep them relatively at arm's length. And as you say, they had one or two chances themselves. I think Dido had a powerful drive that wasn't too far off target either. So I don't think Guingamp can be too disheartened. It was just such a shame for them that the sort of floodgates, I suppose, had to open in such dire circumstances.
Yeah, and the look on Coco's face might be ever burnt into my skull, I think. And the surprise on Carl-Johan Jonsson as well, when he's just slowly watching the ball go past him just because he's never expecting it. It's wrong-footed him. It's an awful way to sort of concede things. But it was great to see the Roudouveau really bouncing as well and people commenting, is it usually like this in Brittany, or is this just for Paris Saint-Germain? No, sometimes they are a little bit mental in France. You might not anticipate it, but they can be. Just very finally, it's related to Paris Saint-Germain at least, Sam. I thought I would get your thoughts on Hesse, who looks like he's going to be joining Stoke on loan in the near future. He was obviously shipped off to Las Palmas in January after a pretty poor start to Paris Saint-Germain. How do you think he would fit in at the Premier League should that transfer go through?
Stoke seems like the right place. If you're going to go and try and rehabilitate a career that has stalled, Bojan Krkic, he's done that. Marko Arnautovic, after him, these sort of talented, don't do it every week, but do it occasionally kind of guys. Hesse has a lot of work to get back to the player he was when he first broke through at Real Madrid. That injury seems to have robbed him of the lightning pace that he had when people were calling him the baby Ronaldo at Real Madrid. He needs to go somewhere where he's going to play. Stoke have lost Arnautovic this summer, so there is a bit of a gap in that starting lineup. And a guy like Hesse, he has the tools to succeed in the Premier League. He's physical, more than technical, but he's not a bad technician with the football. He can make an impact.
And yeah, it does seem like the Potteries is almost like a home for lost toys. I'm thinking of Xherdan Shaqiri as well being another one that's maybe not really found a home, and Britannia being one of those places that really rehabilitates them as a footballer. But hopefully, for Hesse's sake at least, he can find a home there. Let's move on to the champions now, who are also 2 out of 2 as they beat Dijon 4-1 with a hat-trick from Radamel Falcao. Rich, I'll take this to you first. They stuttered against Toulouse in the season opener, really, and were maybe a little bit lucky at times. But was this more of a accomplished performance from Leonardo Jardim's men?
Definitely was. Still not perfect. I think still a little way off that, but this was a huge step up in quality from their opening game, where, as you say, they really weren't at the races, didn't seem to be, cliched as it is, back from their holidays. But no, really strong performance. Again, with some real quality goals. I mean, you don't often see a centre-back scoring a bicycle kick directly from a corner. But Jemison pulled that off and pulled it off remarkably well. We had a brilliant hat-trick from Falcao, which just highlighted just what a quality player he is. You had a scrappy prod in from a Kamil Glick header. You had then his hat-trick goal was just this incredibly powerful header from a Lamar cross. And then, of course, the icing on the cake was his second goal, which was a wonderful curling effort from just outside the box. And then, of course, Dijon's goal themselves was every bit as good, arguably even better, from Wesley Saïd. The first touch that brought the long ball down, and then the instinctive first-time shot through Subasic's legs was fantastic. So it was a really entertaining game. From Monaco's perspective, exactly what was needed, I think, after their stuttering, narrow opening day win. Just quickly to touch on Dijon, I'm still concerned about where their goals will come from. I'm sure we will be touching upon that throughout the season, but yeah, Dijon, I think, will be in for another season of struggle. But back to Monaco, yeah, great performance, but still room for improvement.
Yeah, it's a bit worrying when you lose Lois Bioni, who was so important, and then you're not really replacing him. It's difficult to do that, but you do start to worry about Dijon a little bit. Let's talk about the balance of this Monaco side, Sam. I mean, we've already mentioned how many players they've lost in the summer numerous times, but George has come in at left back. Moutinho was at centre midfield at the weekend. They've had Diakabe started over Mbappe, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. And Ronnie Lopez obviously replacing Bernardo Silva. Is it impressive how they've managed to sort of maintain that strength in depth, in a sense? Especially even like Tielemans is still on the bench, and they've got Terence Kongolo as well who can come on. They've continued to maybe reinvest that money rather wisely, haven't they?
They have. I mean, given that everyone expected this summer to come, all the big clubs to come, take all the jewels from this team, break it away, they knew what was coming and they bought really, really well. But at the same time, some of these guys that have come back in are guys they've had before. Moutinho didn't start that much towards the end of last season. He's now back in the team. Ronnie Lopez was out on loan. He's been brought back to play. This is a really well-run football club. They do know what they're doing. They didn't get caught on the hop this summer. They went and, I mean, the fact they've been able to buy Tielemans, as you say, and he's only just being given time to find his feet in the league. He's not being asked to do anything single-handedly. And as he showed in the against PSG earlier in the season, he's really talented. He's been given time to just adjust, and that's just evidence of how well-run Monaco are.
Yeah, not rushing these young players is a really important thing, I think, to the step of the players, especially when they are bought, they're sort of thrown into the fire sometimes a little bit. Rich, what did you think to the performance of the captain and the hat-trick scorer, Radamel Falcao? I mean, last season was an excellent season. He scored plenty of goals that was maybe overshadowed by performances of some of their youngsters, but it's really great to see the Colombian not only get back to form, but prove that last season wasn't just a fluke.
It's brilliant to see. It really is. I tweeted actually over the weekend. I almost think keeping him, securing his, well, certainly at least another year with the club, that deal in itself is so important, and it could prove to be every bit as important as managing to keep hold of the likes of Fabinho and Thomas Lemar, because just what he offers to the side. You've got a reliable goal scorer first and foremost. He really is clinical in front of goal. There's not many that can match that level of composure when through on goal. He's got such a clever footballing brain. He knows now, largely thanks to that horrendous injury that he suffered, he hasn't got the pace that he once had. So he's now had to rely on movement, positioning. And again, there are very few that can that sort of match his level there. Third then aspect, I suppose, of his game that's probably arguably the most important is that when you have such a young side, is having that experienced player who can help guide those youngsters, who the youngsters can look up to. And there is no better player at the minute than Falcao for that role. So he is absolutely key for the success, as he was last season for Monaco. If Monaco want to get anywhere close to the levels that they hit last season, Falcao being on top form as he was last season is vital. And as we've already seen, I think he's off and running. Yeah,
and it's great to see him back. I mean, I'm trying to think of 5 years ago where, if you tried to say that assigning Radamel Falcao to a new deal was sort of under the radar move, you never believed us. Let's move on to the big story really with Monaco, Sam, and that's Kylian Mbappe, who was left out of the game. And Leonardo Jardim said afterwards that it was the club's decision to keep him out of proceedings. What do you think to the situation that's building? It looks like it's probably going to end in a transfer away, maybe to PSG. Real Madrid is still rumoured to be in there as well. What's your take on everything?
Yeah, I mean, earlier in the summer, all the French media, French radio, everyone seemed quite confident he was going to be the Henry and not the Martial. He was going to stay a little bit longer. He was going to really hit top level in France, go to the World Cup, and then do his big transfer. And everyone seemed to think that was what's going to happen, but that's all gone very quiet now. His tweet earlier this evening, I'm not sure if you saw it, the V for victory emoji with the Monaco flag. It's all very mysterious, not exactly sure what that's supposed to mean, whether he's saying Monaco have won this round or he has, I don't know. But it does seem as if he will be moving on, and PSG seems to be where he will go. Real Madrid, those rumours have really dried up. Spanish newspapers have all said it's PSG, it's not Madrid. It seems as if that's where he's going to end up.
Which seems crazy a little bit, doesn't it, Rich? I mean, how can PSG afford him? How can they match it up with financial fair play? How can Monaco allow someone to go to that kind of club where it almost becomes the almost, so maybe an unfair comparison, but the Bundesliga monopoly of the Bayern Munich? Can that really happen, Mbappe to PSG?
Sadly, yes. I actually saw Jonathan Johnson tweeting about it earlier today. He expects that there will be some. I saw him say that there will obviously be some outgoings player-wise, but he expects new deals with Nike, new main shirt sponsors to be renegotiated, which obviously brings more money in, which can help balance out on the FFP side of things. The FFP rulings, they're not going to be immediately investigated. They're going to be, time to get finances all in order. So sadly, yes, I think this move could happen. It's PSG fans won't like me saying this. It's a dreadful move for Ligue, I think. It's Monaco handing the keys to the giving the title to PSG before, in theory, it's going to be before September's arrived. Monaco just said, have our best player. Yeah, okay, they're going to get a huge sum of money for him. But whereas previously Monaco obviously have shipped all their players outside of Ligue, this is an internal one. This is now PSG saying, you know what, you've angered the beast last season, and we're just going to take what we want. And if that's the best player in the world who happens to play for a fellow Ligue side, so be it. And if that's going to happen to the team who most likely to challenge PSG this season, what hope do they have? What hope do other Ligue 1 sides have? So for me, it's a dreadful move for Ligue 1. It's probably going to be a great move for Mbappe. It's obviously a great move for PSG. Maybe you could argue it is a good move for Monaco. They're getting, they're going to probably get in excess of 100 million euros for a player they've basically put no money towards. Brought him up through the youth system. But yeah, it's hard to see anything other than this is just a really bad move for the league as a whole. Almost, maybe even more so, worse for the league than the Neymar signing.
It's an interesting one. I mean, Sam, we've already talked about the logjam really at Paris Saint-Germain and the pressure on players to perform instantly. If an 18-year-old doesn't quite hit the ground running, I know it's all hypothetical here, but maybe he struggles and they start pulling him out the side and then he maybe misses out on the World Cup. Is this the best move for Mbappe right now?
Almost certainly not. The smart move, if you're talking about the World Cup, you're talking about setting yourself up longer term, does seem to be stay where you're the main man. Stay where you know that you can do it. You know that the teammate is going to be built largely around you. The team will play for you. The team all believe in you. Going to PSG would be a huge risk, perhaps a smaller one than going to Real Madrid, where the pressure is even greater because Real Madrid do have that history. They do have the fact that you have to perform from day one. And if not, you will be benched and shipped out. Look at the way they dealt in Madrid with guys like Wesley Sneijder. Top-class players didn't quite do it there and were gone quickly. That's would be the worst decision for Mbappe, but PSG is also probably not a great call. I mean, he could well go there. He could well be the main man, but it's going to be difficult for him competing with Cavani and Neymar and all these other players. I mean, they're going to need 3 or 4 footballs. It's a very big gamble for a guy who's still a teenager with the World Cup right there on the horizon. You're talking about building a career for 10, 12, 15 years. You don't have to go to PSG this season. This is not the case of you'll never get this chance again. We know how good this player is. He's unless he suffers a terrible injury, which, we all hope that doesn't happen, the clubs will all be there next summer.
Yeah, they're not, especially if he carries on in this form, they're not going away. It's almost like I'm a little bit worried that Mbappe becomes what Neymar was at Barcelona, which is in the shadow of a greater player who's more experienced and hitting his prime just as he enters the fray. And the points are made beautifully both by Rich. I agree with your point, and I want to sort of expand upon it, saying that if this deal does happen, it sort of almost crushes the competitiveness of Liga, and the fact that PSG are doing the classic Juventus Bayern Munich thing, which is what all big clubs should do, which is buy the best players from your competitors and make them almost obsolete. I mean, Munich have had a monopoly over the Bundesliga over the last few years because they kept stealing all of Dortmund's great players as they were really coming to the fore. And the real issue is clubs in other countries like Dortmund have a decent amount of cash behind them, can build up players and compete. And in Spain, Atletico Madrid can do something like that. In Italy, Roma, Napoli, now AC Milan as well, can sort of reinvent themselves in ways. But in France, other than Monaco, there's not a team that can keep their players and get the players that would advance them enough to get anywhere near Paris Saint-Germain. The only things you can hope for is maybe the Marseille money increases, maybe the Lille money increases, and maybe they can go a little bit more crazy and compete. But does it really worry me that if it does go through, that it could be one of those situations where we might not see another team catch up with them for another 4, 5, maybe even 6 years, which is frightening after we had such an exciting season last season where we thought we might be hitting a precipice of a really exciting league. But I suppose that's a rant for another day. We'll wait and see if that happens. So we'll make sure I take a sharp drink on that one, I think. Another one of the 5 sides that have started unbeaten are Lyon, who took 3 points against Rennes on Friday night. They were a little cautious we were a little cautious, I have to say, last week, Rich, in going too overboard with Bruno Genesio's men. It's still early days, but can we start climbing on the bandwagon for them now?
It's tough to, isn't it, after only 2 games? But it's 2 very different performances. They had their first game at home, newly promoted club, go out and get a big scoreline. They got it. They got their new striker with a double. Their sort of former young prodigy, looking to regain his form, been given the captaincy. He got on the score sheet with 2. So job done first week. Second week, then you're away, an established Ligue 1 side. You never know quite what you're going to get with Rennes. And again, it was a test that they passed. So on the basis of 2 games and only those 2 games, you have to say it's been a super start for Lyon. I think any fan, any board member, Olas himself, if you had said you'll win 4-0 at home to Strasbourg and then you'll win 2-1 away at Rennes, I'll have that deal off you straight away. Mariano Diaz has come in, has looked powerful, has looked direct. Touch of fortune about some of his goals, but really, really strong header for the winner against Rennes. Fekir is looking almost back to his best now. Looks like giving him that captaincy could actually be the real spark that was needed. And then, of course, you've got Depay and Traore up front as well, and they're looking, they're looking really up for it this season. So, on the basis of 2 games, you can't say anything but let's get on the bandwagon. But as obvious as it is, it's only 2 games. There will be tougher tests to come, but two games in, super stuff.
Yeah, I always say ignore the table until the 10th game, and then you can maybe judge a little bit better. But I like jumping on bandwagons. Let's talk about Mariano Diaz, Sam, because he's maybe a little bit of an unknown quantity, really, being mainly in Real Madrid's B side for a reasonable amount of time. But in his first game, he scores 2 goals. He's maybe a little bit lucky, and we maybe give him a pass on that one. But he was really excellent in that game on Friday night with his movement and an excellently taken goal. What do you make to his start in Liga?
I mean, what more could you ask for? What a start. As you say, goal against promoted side. That's good, handy, nice start. But really, the performance against a team that you you need to beat if you want to be at the pointy end at the end of the season. But it's difficult, away from home. They were very competitive. That was a tough game of football, and Mariano was in everything. Got the winner, and he's been prolific at every level. He's been prolific since he was in the Real Madrid academy, and he's now doing it at Ligue level. And it's just a really impressive start. He's not that young. I think some people are sort of viewing him as this season's Mbappe or something like that. He's 24. He's a lot older than that, but he's still plenty of room for improvement, and he's hit the ground running. Looks like a great signing. Marseille apparently looked at him last summer, thought about it, didn't pull the trigger. I think they're probably regretting that right now.
And in all honesty, I think it's a great move from Lyon and their scouting department to get someone who's maybe a little bit under the radar. I don't want to disparage him at all because he's been fantastic, but it's not someone I had heard particularly of before the summer, and it was a relatively inexpensive deal. There didn't seem to be any others really chasing him, but that's excellent work from a scouting department to narrow in on someone with that kind of quality that has that kind of goal scoring record and get him through the door, and then him proving himself at that level as well. I think that's a good sign for at least the future of this Lyon team and replacing some of those big players. What you briefly mentioned them earlier, Rich, some of the other players, Bertrand Traoré and Depay and Fekir. We talked a little bit about the captain last week, so we'll focus on those two wingers who were, in all honesty, a little bit quiet at times, and Depay gave the ball away a couple of times, but did score the free kick. Do you think that they're the two best ones? Is maybe if Max, do you maybe stick Cornet in there? Are they competing for those positions, or at least for the time being, is it Memphis and Traoré for you?
It is them. I think purely on the basis that I'm a firm believer that Maxwell Cornet is a brilliant player to bring off the bench. If you've got 25 minutes to go and you need a goal, he's a really, really good option to bring off the bench. I think you start him, he burns out, he gets sloppy, starts giving the ball away. 25 minutes, half an hour is the perfect optimum Cornet time, shall we say. So I think we saw, we've seen the good and the bad, I suppose, but primarily, I think more the good. I thought Traoré was excellent against Strasbourg. Again, he looks quick, direct, exciting, happy to run with the ball. Everything that you want from a wide player. Proved it last season on loan at Ajax that he can get on the score sheet a heck of a lot of times. Can do it in Europe as well. So they will persist with him. Depay, a little bit more experience on the big stage. I think just gives enough glimpses, I think, to keep him in that side. Really slightly fortuitous free kick, albeit. Pretty sloppy goalkeeping from Abdoulaye Diallo, but it will be those two for the time being. There's a lot of youngsters to come through that I'm looking forward to seeing at some point this season. But for me, Cornet is a bench player, but a very, very good bench player. Let me caveat it with that.
He might disagree with that if he's looking at these clubs that are supposedly wanting him joining them. He might be pushing for a start sooner rather than later. Let's talk about very quickly I wanted to mention at least is that midfield and the defence, which is something we've questioned at times last season, especially the defending, but it did seem a little bit better to me in this one. They did seem to be a little bit more cohesive. The defence didn't seem as, although Rennes were maybe a little bit lethargic at times, they didn't seem as troubled. They seemed a bit more composed, which it can only be a positive sign for the future. But I do have an excellent question here from a fan, and I'll give it to both of you just in case, because it is a little bit of a more retro style of Liga question, and that is Mariano Diaz, the new Sonny Anderson, the very Ligue 1 player that used to score plenty of goals for Lyon and a couple for Monaco and Marseille in his time in there. I'll let you take it first, Sam. Could he be that kind of consistent goal scorer? Sam, can you hear me, Sam? He might have dropped out of the call. Rich, can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, I'll pass that on to you. Is he a possible future Sonny Anderson, the former very late 90s, early 2000s Lyon starlet?
I do love a retro question. it's quite a big shoes to fill. I mean, he had big enough shoes to fill with coming in and sort of almost stepping into where Lacazette was. So I don't know. It's very early stages, isn't it? He's impressed at sort of B level. This is a solid. You can get now a solid couple of seasons in first team football in a top league. Let's wait and see. Let's not give him. I'll be the killjoy of the question, unfortunately. But let's wait and see before giving him a label, because I'm fairly certain many are going to be wanting to pin some kind of Lacazette label on him, whether he'll want that or not. So, shall we? Let's sort of almost park that question for a couple of weeks, because I wouldn't want to put my foot in with Lyon fans.
Yeah, it might be a little bit too early to do that kind of comparison, at least anyway. It's a bit of a rush. But I do want to get your thoughts, Rich, as well on your club, Rennes, who we mentioned at the start of the season looked pretty exciting, but formation was a little bit different. Formation, but personnel at least was a bit different in this one. Were you a little bit disappointed in how they performed, really, especially in that first half or the first 15 minutes, especially where they were really penned back?
They were... I mean, Gourcuff seems to be under this illusion that Rami Bensebaini is a left back. We've got Ludovic Ball, who is a very competent left back. We've got Fatou Mouassa, who proved last season he's much better going forward, but again, competent left back. It's a case of I think he's trying to please Bensebaini. Obviously, Bensebaini has been linked throughout the summer with a move to Lille. Whether he's just playing him just to keep him happy, I don't know, because certainly Nyanyon and Mexer looked far stronger this week than they did in than Nyanyon and Bensebaini looked in the first game against Troyes, against obviously much better opposition in Lyon. So that's an odd call. I don't see Bensebaini is too rash in a tackle to be to be marking a attacking wide player in Bertrand Traore. So I really, really don't see him as a left back. Mouassa then was deployed as on the right wing. Left me scratching my head when the squad was announced. I really couldn't see what formation they were going to be playing, but it seemed in the end it was just a fairly straightforward 4-4-2. But Mouassa actually, I thought, was probably Rennes' best player. I mean, it was so telegraphed what he was going to be doing, because he's so heavily left-footed, that he was going to be cutting in every time. But time and time again, the Lyon players didn't quite get it. And so he actually had quite a bit of success. Certainly, I thought in that first half, he had a couple of efforts on goal that caused... I know there was one that forced Lopez into a very good save. So I thought he was really good. I'm still unsure whether Ismail Assar is a striker. We have other more direct, more obvious strikers in the squad. Ismail Assar, I thought, played better for Metz when played a little further out on the left. I'd quite like to see him given that, because I don't quite think he's clinical. I know he scored some goals last season, he scored some brilliant goals last season. I don't think he's clinical enough to be a centre forward. I think if you're going to have your centre forward, you need to be trusting that when in front of goal, he'll be putting the ball in the net. And I don't know if I quite have that with Ismail Assar. I'd much prefer to see him as that exciting, wider player that we saw with Metz last season. So there's still, I mean, it's season after season I go on about it's another transition period. And we're finding it is again. And it's getting a little bit boring now. Because the personnel are there. I thought we've had a really good transfer window, but I just go back to, does Christian Gourcuff know what he's doing? And at the minute, I can't answer that positively.
I might have his head spin a little bit, but all I could think about while watching the game is, why don't they try and employ a 3-4-3? They've got three centre-backs they're desperate to play at centre-back, Bensebaini, Mexer, and Yoris Nyanyon. They've got two solid midfielders that they can put in the middle of that, of Andre and Bourgeot, I thought was pretty good as well. Play Fatou Mouassa and Ludovic Ball as wing-backs. That's pretty simple or self-explanatory. They're both decent going forward. Ball's a little bit better going back, so he but they have that cover of Andre in the middle there with them, and then play Ismaili Sarr slightly left, maybe someone like Jordan Tell slightly right, and then Mubele up front. It doesn't seem too complicated that fits in a lot of plenty of the quality players in better positions for them, but he sticks with a 4-4-2, playing Sarr up front, playing Ben Spiney as a left back.
You're bang on. The personnel-wise there does not dictate a 4-4-2 as the best formation for this Rennes side to be playing. I just don't know if Christian Gourcuff has that flexibility anymore or insight to recognise what the best formation is with these players. And I almost think now he's just sticking to what he knows. And it's a great shame because it could be that we're looking at one of the biggest unfulfilled seasons for Rennes in quite a while. Because I do think, personnel-wise, there is a squad there that could push for a, dare I say, top 6. There's some really exciting young players in that squad. There's a smattering of senior players there who can bring on experience, but it's there. The squad is there, but as ever with Rennes, there's just that one missing component that allows them to get over the line and reach that next stage. And sadly, it looks like that missing component this year is Christian Gourcuff.
Yeah, and I think we all shed a tear when we saw Ben Sabine was at left back. I did a piece when for Outside the Boot last season over the off season actually on him, and I watched a fair few games of him playing at left back, and he is not very good at left back. We'll leave it at that. Now it's time for our Liga snapshots, and I have a feeling that we have one in mind, all of us, but I've stolen it, so I won't start with that one. I'll savour it to the end because it's a really good one. So I'll start with you, Sam. What's your Liga snapshot?
Well, for me, the snapshot of the weekend was the first game of the weekend. Troyes beating Nice, that game that really produced a lot of different storylines. Troyes, last time they were in Ligue 1, were a disaster. They didn't get 4 points until the 8th game week of the season. They didn't pass 8 points till the 14th week of the season. They're at 4 points already. That's great. That's really exciting. Good for them. They've improved a huge amount in that year back in the second division. And Nice, by contrast, have no points. That is really not what we expected from a team that rode the transfer window fairly well, given the restrictions on them, given the players they lost and the players they brought in. I think we all expected Nice to perform better. They were the better side against Troyes. That's probably not in doubt. They dominated the ball, they dominated the chances, but they didn't put them away. They have players to come back. Schneider yet to come into the side. They'll definitely improve. Bigger fish to fry with the Champions League playoff on the horizon as well. But this is a real interesting point for both these teams. Troyes are riding high in 8th, and Nice are a long way behind them.
And I'll just add to this one, really, Rich, because we have a question from one of our own writers in Tony Thomas Salva, who's mentioned, what do you think of Nice's first 2 matches? Because Sam's hit the nail on the head there. They've had a decent window, but they've really struggled in these Ligue 1 matches as they've maybe shifted their focus a little bit to the Champions League. Are you a little bit worried about them?
I'm worried about them in so much as they're not going to be replicating the form and success of last season. That's probably as far as my worry goes. I think they just need to, as silly as it sounds, they just need to click, and it will come. It will come. They've had 2 pretty poor performances now. They're probably a little bit distracted with, wouldn't it be brilliant to get into the Champions League group stages? You know, this squad, the stadium that they've got, the whole setup is keyed up for success on a bigger stage. So I think they have been a little bit distracted by that. I think once we know whether they will or won't be in those group stages of the Champions League, at that point, then things will probably start to click into gear. They will have the sort of personnel back, you know, as Sam pointed out, they will have the likes of Schneider coming into the squad. Once the transfer window closes, we'll know whether they'll have managed to keep hold of Seri or not. The miracle that it would be if they do. But yeah, in terms of worry, my only worry for them is I don't believe anyway that they will be living up to the performances that they put in last season. I think if fans and board alike can get on board with that and can appreciate that actually it's not that Nice have gone backwards, it's that there's a lot of other clubs that have improved over the summer and have caught them up. And I don't think Nice will be a top 3 side this season. I think if they can come out of the end of this season top 6, I think that's a pretty successful season for them.
Yeah, I do really worry about that Napoli game with that fast passing attack, and Nice is a little bit lumbering defending, and an awkward goalkeeper who's made a number of mistakes already. I'm not really looking forward to Wednesday. Rich, what's your snapshot then?
I have gone for the Nantes v Marseille game. Ranieri has really had quite a time in his return to Ligue. Obviously, the big game last weekend was him v Bielsa, where he came out. Nantes side came out very much second best there. First home game, and within 25 minutes, he's had to make all 3 substitutions due to injuries. So perhaps not the start that he would quite like. The only thing that saved it being a far worse scoreline than a 1-0 Marseille win was the form of their goalkeeper. Pronunciation-wise here, I may butcher this, but Tatarusanu, who made a number of really, really good saves. He was literally the only thing that prevented it being 3-4, 5-0. Main thing that I wanted to touch on was Marseille. You know, with all the signings that they've made and are looking to make, for the second week in a row, it was a slightly unheralded player that turned out to be the hero. It was Clinton and G last week. Don't think many saw that coming. I think perhaps even fewer saw Lucas Ocampos being introduced just after the hour mark and ultimately proving the match winner with a goal right at the end. So for all the players that, as I say, that are coming into Marseille, it's quite good that they've got this depth of players that we've forgotten about. I'd written off Ocampos. I thought he'd be out of there. You know, he's really failed, I think, to hit the levels that we initially had hoped for him. Maybe you could say the same with Ng. So a little bit of rebirth, I suppose, going on at Marseille. That's nice to see.
Yeah, and Rudy Garcia, the second manager in a row to give Claudio Ranieri a beautiful welcome again. I think French managers are falling in love with the Italian, it seems, on a weekly basis. But time for mine, which is the fun, entertaining one that probably everyone wanted this week. I'll steal everyone's thunder. And just to picture the scene, I was at work on the Sunday, lucky me having the Sunday shift, coming back. There's about half an hour of the Lille-Strasbourg game. I'll stick that on. What a great decision that was, because we went full Bielsa and it was absolutely El Loco. First of all, as we mentioned in the news, Mike Maignan got sent off for an absurd moment where the ball was kicked out. It's a little bit of a tussle, handbags with the player, and he throws the ball at his head right in front of the referee and gets a red card. So with their 3 subs made earlier on, 2 from injury, 1 from a weird decision to take someone off, it seemed like in the first half, Nicolas de Préville, the hero of the hour, goes in goal. The hardest working player in league in French football, as I always say, the one that you can always rely on, even though he missed that open net. He goes in goal and he saves a 1-on-1. It was absolutely mental. Eventually, he lets in a goal from the corner. It's not really his fault, I don't think. Maybe a more experienced goalkeeper does better there, but he's like 5'0". It's a little bit unfortunate for him. Why he's in goal in the first place, we don't know. But that changes anyway, because Amadou decides he wants to go in goal, almost like Sunday football or a five-a-side where you change goalkeepers after every goal. It seemed like it for a moment. He went in goal so they could try and grab a goal back through de Préville. And then Strasbourg got the penalty, and I thought for a moment, please let Amadou save this goal with this penalty. This will be the mentalist match you will ever see. Unfortunately, he's just misses it. And then there's an excellent goal to finish it off from a real talisman at Strasbourg. His name escapes me at the moment, but he's been
Graham.
there. Yes, he's been there for a perfect name for it, isn't it? It's all wonderful poetry. It was one of the most incredible games you may ever see. That followed by a Man United 4-0 win really capped off my Sunday. It was really lovely. And then a Neymar debut. By me, I might have been in cloudline, you might imagine, on Sunday night, which is no surprise. And it all started off with that. Something you may never see again in that Lille game. If you can find highlights, if you can find something on them, I implore you to take a view at it, because it is one of those moments in football that is just... How can you hate football if you see a moment like that? Even if you're a Lille fan, you just shake your head and giggle at it. It was absolutely wonderful insanity.
For me, it very much felt like if Marcelo Bielsa was going to be 90 minutes of football, if I tell a lie, if Marcelo Bielsa was going to be half an hour of football, this was the game that he was going to be. This was Marcelo Bielsa in a football match.
I'm still a little bit gutted. If Amadou saves the penalty, if the goalkeeper that came on for the goalkeeper that came on for the goalkeeper saves a penalty, it would have been the perfect game. I think we could all packed up and gone home and never watch football again. I think after that moment, we'd have completed football. That would have been everything I think we ever needed to see. But we'll finish tonight with some readers' questions. Thanks to everyone who submitted them. We've mentioned a few already. But we'll start with this one from Simon Quere, and apologies if I butchered your surname there, sir, but we'll take your question first, which is, I'll send it to you, Sam, first. Which manager will be sacked first in Ligue 1 this season?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I think I'm going to go for a very unpopular answer and say Claudio Ranieri. He's been sacked a lot in his career. His Leicester miracle overshadows some of his less successful jobs. This is the man who led Greece to a defeat to the Faroe Islands. This is a guy who's had trouble in the past. He's had a lot of bad luck to start this season already. I mean, how can you legislate for 3 injuries inside 24 minutes? But I think that's one that is going to be an unpopular one, but that's my my outlier, my guess. That's what I think is what's going to happen.
Rich, who do you think is the first manager sacked?
I can't pick. There's two. Christian Gourcuff, a lot of money. If he doesn't live up to and get the performances out of that team with the money that was spent this summer, could be in big trouble. Or maybe Patrice Caron, but Kahn didn't really perform very well last season. Only just avoided relegation. Haven't won yet. Haven't got a point yet after 2 games. Maybe.
I'm going to go for a relatively not new manager to Ligue 1, but he only started this summer as well, and that's Michel Desikarian. He's in a tough job, isn't he? I mean, Montpellier, unfortunately, as we mentioned last week, they lost Louis Nicolan, who's so influential in the summer. That breeds a little bit of sentiment, but not for long. He plays a negative style of football that really got him the job sacked at Nantes, and he's lost Mounier in the summer. He's lost Boudebouz now to Real Betis, which I wrote a piece that Betis fans loved from the looks of things. But they play a negative football. They really struggled against Toulouse. It could have been 3 or 4 really to the home side, and I just fear they don't have enough quality. And if they're flirting with relegation again, come November, they're probably going to get rid of him. I think that seems to be the Montpellier way, to be fair, is have a manager struggle, get rid of him, and hope someone can give you a bit of a boost. Another one here from France Barrett, and it's a little bit of a cheeky one, I think. I'll start with you again, Sam. How many goals will PSG score against Toulouse at the Parc des Princes on Sunday?
Well, that's interesting. They struggled against Toulouse a little bit last season. It's different world now, obviously. I'm going to say 4. Nothing too ambitious. I'll go with 4.
Yeah. Rich, I mean, Toulouse kept a clean sheet at the Parc des Princes last season, didn't they?
They're pretty good defensively. I think they're, not pretty good. They're very good defensively, actually, Toulouse. So a lot will perhaps depend on whether Issa Diop's back. That partnership that he has with Christophe Julien is a real standout partnership. I don't know. I think why not say something? Let's give Toulouse a bit of credit here. Let's say 3.
I'm going to go with 1. let's see if my prediction comes true. Toulouse are going to set up to do exactly the same as they did last year, which is part of the bus. And if they do have Diop, I think it might even be 0, but they might even nick that. But I'm going to give them a little bit of credit. They've got a great young keeper. They've got a solid defence. They were the best defence last season outside the top 3. Yeah, 1-0. That's not too bad, I don't think. Final question, really. Final 2 questions at least. Who has been the surprise player for you for these first 2 weeks of the season? I'll start with you, Sam.
Oh, it's a difficult one. I mean, I think there's a lot of options. Mariano Diaz, I think the fact that he's hit the ground running so quickly, I kind of thought that perhaps if any of Lyon's new signing centre forwards were going to do it, it would be the other one. It would be Traoré. He looked the more impressive last season for Ajax, playing at a higher level perhaps than Diaz most weeks, but Diaz has looked the goods, and he's led Lyon to the top of the league, and you really can't ask more than that.
Rich, who do you think?
I can't disagree. There's been, obviously a plethora of new players who've come into the league, but in terms of one who surprised me, I think helped by the fact I knew very little about him, but yeah, it's Mariano Diaz.
Yeah, and I'm going to go for maybe a slightly left field one, and that's Younes Sankari, who's been excellent before, but he scored 2 goals in the Europa League during the qualifiers, even though Bordeaux went out, and he scored 2 goals already in Ligue from 2 shots. I think that's pretty productive for a midfielder. That's a nice start to the season. Great start for him. Final question. Thank you, T. Keeling, for that one. And our final question is from Arian H. 1999. Who do you reckon will have a breakout season this season? I'll start with you on this one, Rich.
Who will? Slight biasness, I suppose. I'm quite excited to see how Adama Diakhaby does at Monaco. I think it was I didn't expect him to get too many starts, but started against Dijon. I thought his partnership with Falcao looked pretty good. He's still very raw, very, very raw, but really excited to see how he pans out. I think he could be a player to watch out for this season.
Sam, what do you think?
Is it unfair to say Francois Camano? He's played a few seasons already in Ligue 1, but I think maybe this is going to be his transition year into really being a name that people know. He's going to become a bit more of a YouTube star. I think people are going to start really taking note of what he can do for Bordeaux. I'm
going to go for a defender because I like my defending a little bit. And I like Ronel Pierre-Gabriel of Saint-Etienne, the right back. I think that he's had a really nice start to the season, and I think it could be a really breakout season for him. Only at 18 years of age, he's given more of the freedom to start. He started the last 2 games. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he progresses at Ligue. That's all for us this evening. My thanks to Rich and Sam, and for all of you listening at home. Join us for the preview show on Thursday, and the main show will be back at the same time, same place next week. A bientôt, and goodbye.